white cloaks in right?
Imagine for a moment that you're an elementary school teacher, and you've got this one kid in your class that is biblically stupid. Just a paste-eating, rock-headed doofus. And for the last couple of years, this kid has been getting 20s and 30s on his math tests. Basically what he would get if he just circled option C on every question and handed it back in. Through 19 episodes, the Wheel of Time show has been that child.
It wasn't you who I tracked. It was her. She has a teller.
Then, out of nowhere, you get a test back from that kid. And he's written his name on it, the date is in the top left-hand corner, and he shows good material understanding of about half the questions. You would be shocked. Stunned even. You had assumed that his favorite meal of lead paint chips had rendered this child permanently innumerate. But at some point, wouldn't you also start to get mad? This kid could have been producing borderline passable work for the last half-decade, joined in the ranks of all the other middling trash you deal with on a regular basis. And he just didn't feel like it? Or was too lazy? I would lose my mind. And after sitting with it for a couple of days, that's where I ultimately ended up with this episode. There were watchable scenes, and I would argue that the Sharam explosion was a cool enough scene that this show has now added something to the series rather than being exclusively a demeaning mockery of it. But it shouldn't have taken this long, and there's no way that this kind of quality will be maintained. It could be, but we all know it won't. The episode starts with Rand and Lan's sword training again. I guess we can confirm that fan feedback was taken and acted upon because that's 2 scenes of Rand and Lan working the swords together this season. They talk a bit and it doesn't make me want to kill myself. My only real complaint is that the weird metal sounds need to stop every time somebody swings a sword. It's distracting and unnecessary. The wise ones in Moraine talk a little bit, and the show is beginning to have a problem with what I call flashcarding. It's when a show tries to introduce too many concepts at once, and normal dialogue goes by the wayside. In this scene, we barely see a Gaishain, and the characters immediately give a quick Wikipedia summary of what a Gaishain is, just to kind of tick off the box. It's very tell and not show. Fast forward a little bit, and Aviendha is displeased that Rand and Lan are using swords so close to Ruidan. So she pushes Rand down like she's bullying a fat toddler. That's your main character on the ground, everybody. Just getting bullied. She then goes at Lan, and they roll around on the ground, each scoring a point for taking a weapon off the other.
Really?
I talked a little in the last video about how Lan has been absolutely destroyed as a character, how he won't stop crying and refuses to stand up for himself, and him not being able to beat a not particularly in-shape girl is remarkably consistent, and it's for the worst. Bear is unhappy with these wild shenanigans and tells Aviendha it's time for her to give up the life of a maiden of the spear and become a wise one. She snaps all 3 of Aviendha's spears over her knees, but weren't those same spear shafts blocking Lan's sword swings 2 minutes ago? Did the show forget to put the channeling lights here? Eventually, Aviendha requests permission to go to Ruidan, and it's granted, so she runs off. Moraine and Rand then have a conversation, and the dialogue remains a little wonky, but this scores a passing grade for me. Rand doesn't trust Moraine not to be a conniving bitch and wants oaths of loyalty to help him. Moraine won't give them because they will bind her. There's legitimate character conflict, and it's directionally correct to the books. I know it seems like I'm an asshole about this stuff some of the time, but it really doesn't take all that much to make me happy. Fast forward a couple days and Rurik is providing Ruidan exposition for Rand. Should he be telling Rand this? No, probably not. But I can also acknowledge that this is an extremely difficult concept with a lot of nuance to set up. Sometimes the characters just need to exposit and we the audience have to grit our teeth and listen to it. It's not good, but it's the best we're gonna get at the moment. On the hills above Ruidan, the team encounters Savannah and Couladin, who are waiting for Megden to come back. Savannah looks like the picture that Freckled Jesus would give to the plastic surgeon, showing him how she wants to look when he's done. She's also wearing what appears to be a half-dozen wicker placemats origamied onto her head, which is quite the choice.
Why are you the way that you are?
We learn that Megden is in Ruidan being tested right now and is married to Savannah. Also that Couladin doesn't want Rand tested as he doesn't believe him to be a true Aiel. These are both correct elements. Couladin eventually gets mad and pulls his knife on somebody. I'm not actually sure who he was going for here, but Bear puts him in his place. You can just tell that Ruark is totally going to be like Lan in this show.
Son of a...
Rand then asks to go to Ruidan and is approved, and Moraine asks to go as well and is also approved. As they depart, they have this interaction.
Ready?
No.
I was shocked. That's called bravery from our young intrepid hero. Am I watching the right show? So the pair head into Ruidan and they navel gaze at the pretty scenery for a moment before arriving at the base of Avendasora. Shit looks good. They talk about Layman's sin and how their fates have been intertwined since before Rand was born. No real complaints. Then Rand goes into the glassed columns, and while this isn't really what these looked like in my head, this is canonically correct. Kudos to the boys and girls in the set department. Rand has his first vision, and it's the vision of his biological father Janduin discovering Tigraine after her stint with maternal mortality. This is not a Ruidan vision in the book, but I understand why they put it here to make it immediately apparent that you're tracking down a family line. Other than a small complaint about Janduin not putting his veil up to fight in the typical lackluster choreography, I don't have a lot to complain about. One complaint that I do have comes immediately after, and that this show genuinely thinks you're retarded. We cut back to Rand and he mutters,
My mother. My father.
just in case you didn't get what you just saw. Fuck me, this is not necessary. You showed it. You don't immediately have to tell it afterwards. Vision 2 then kicks off with Mandian and Saldrea, and this is a book vision. In the books, the Gen Aiel, the peaceful Aiel, but also not the ones that become the Tuatha'an, know they're dying out, functionally outcompeted by the Aiel that don't constrain themselves to the way of the leaf. But the Gen Aiel also don't want the purpose of the Aiel to be lost, so they work with the Aes Sedai to create Ruidan in the glass columns so that the Aiel as we know them will be aware of their history. In the show, the Gen Aiel are apparently all dead and Latra is the Aes Sedai they worked with to make Ruidan. Between her voice and the visuals here, I'm reminded of the introduction to the Dark Souls game, which is pretty high praise. It goes without saying that the Sarkhanen was not used to make the glass columns, but as a piece of television, I guess this works. Rand snaps back then, and he's now seeing the corpses of the Aiel who couldn't handle the truth and died in the columns. Fuck me, we're showing basic cause and effect now? This show is having its day. It's worth noting that the second and third visions from the books that planned to build Ruidan and the creation of the Maidens of the Spear were skipped. That's understandable, given time constraints, but I am stunned that the formation of the Maidens of the Spear didn't make it into this episode somehow. I thought there was no way that Rafe Judkins would have that level of restraint. The third vision is the vision of Luwin, and it is the best sequence this show has managed so far. Merry, Pippin, and Black Fatty Bulger are hanging with the trees when Luwin is told that his sister has been taken by bandits. One of the downside of being pacifists is that your shit probably gets taken a lot. Instead of writing the girls off, Luwin and his friends mount a rescue mission. When their attempt at stealth fails, they end up having to fight their way out, and Luwin ends up killing a guy while Fatty Bulger gets stabbed and dies. Upon returning to their caravan, Luwin is rejected for breaking the oath of nonviolence, including by his mother. At that point, Luwin screams in rage and decides he will defend his family, the Aiel, even though they rejected him because they won't defend themselves. The last minute of this scene honestly had me pumped. I was waiting for the voiceover from The Dark Knight to kick in about the hero that the Aiel need, not the hero that they deserve.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight.
This was good shit. If they could have done this dead body a little less goofy, I would have given them full marks for this scene. Rand's walking again, and he passes Mirrodin, who is tearing at his face, unable to handle the truth of what he's witnessing. This is good. Then, to kill the momentum, we cut back to Moraine, who somehow knows to channel into this tree in order to find the Sarkhanen there. Sure, why the fuck not? She then patters over to the three rings and gets pulled into them like Avienda. This is fine, it looks cool. I don't understand why the three arches at the tower look so stupid and this looks so good, but whatever. A bunch of potential futures flash in her mind. In one, Lan has the same fire effects as Chris Evans in that Fantastic Four movie that came out in... Nope, that's not right. That movie came out 6 years ago. Definitely not 20. Rand's next vision is the splitting of the Tinkers from the Aiel. I'm not sure they did a great job of communicating that. The connection is the dialogue about the songs and the way of the leaf, but I'm not sure you're going to get that if you've only watched the show. But on the other hand, it's hypocritical of me to bash on the show for explaining everything like its audience is a retarded 5-year-old, and then bash it for being too subtle. I appreciate when people make TV for adults. Well, I didn't particularly like this scene. Fuck this doddering old man and his stupid-ass pacifism. It hits the mark of emphasizing how cruel it was for the Aes Sedai to send these guys away with no real means or mindset to protect themselves. You can't be a passive victim in hard times. The next vision is the departure from Paramdisen, where the Aes Sedai loaded up the Aiel with the ter'angreal and sent them on their way. This is the worst of the visions, and not just because Jonai has a gay lover apparently, which is a shame because it's probably the best of the visions from the books. Latro Sedai gives the Aiel the angreal to take with them to hiding, and I think this misses the mark. In the books, it's subtle, but the Aes Sedai aren't giving the angreal to the Aiel because the angreal are sacred, but because the Aiel are sacred. The Aes Sedai are giving the angreal to the Aiel so the Aiel will have an important enough task to convince them to leave and go into hiding, and to spare them from the massacre that they know is about to hit the city. In the books, 10,000 Aiel died trying to wake a male Aes Sedai gone mad from the taint, and the Aes Sedai can't bear to watch their beloved companions die like that again. A pair of male Aes Sedai are approaching the city, and the women are getting ready to try and defend the city like the Japanese against Godzilla, and they're evacuating who they can. As part of that, though, the angreal they're giving the Aiel aren't fighting angreal. If the angreal could be used for fighting, the women would have kept it to fight against the male Aes Sedai. There's a reason in the books that there aren't any useful angreal with the exception of the Choden Call access keys in Ruidan, which were too powerful to be used in that kind of engagement. So giving away the Sarkhanen right there doesn't make any sense. The idea that their scared Lanfear is going to come and take it from them is a miss. If you're scared of Lanfear, you don't give away your best weapon. But hell, apparently the rest of the plot needed to happen. Rand then takes his final walk, and Mirrodin is tearing his eyes out. God damn do I love it. Then we get to the best scene this show has managed in 20 episodes, and I don't think Rafe Judkins understood what he did with this because there's no way it would fly with his politics. But if he knew what he was doing and he intentionally put them aside, good for him. I'll probably make a separate video about this later, but this scene is essentially the Tower of Babel. By trying to subvert the gender binary delivered by the creator, the Aes Sedai accidentally unleashed calamity upon the world. It's a metaphor for the importance of letting men be men and women be women and not trying to fuck with that lest you collapse society. But Rafe Judkins delivered it straight. I gotta give him credit for that. I even like that he captured Robert Jordan's contempt for academics and their extremely narrow field of expertise and not understanding all the blue-collar tasks around them that make their lives feasible. Lanfear incorrectly assumes that the Aiel harvest wheat by hand due to a lack of technological advancement or of poverty. And while Charn tries to explain that no, his family just takes joy in farming the old-fashioned way, it's really good. I don't know where this has been for 19 episodes. So Charn goes out and is harvesting the grain, and it's bright, and everybody's singing, and it's happy, and then the Sharam explodes as Lanfear drills into the boar, and we get to see the boar and the Dark One on the other side. And this is great. The contract is striking, the effects look outstanding, and the art direction, which has so often been lacking in this show, has a vision. It's the best scene in this show, by far, and it's a scene that legitimately adds artistic value to this series for the very first time. I don't have enough good things to say about this scene. But then it's over, and the show is back to being what it's been for the last 19 episodes. Rand is back as Rand and hits the dirt. His dragon tattoos grow in and they look absolutely terrible. I don't know how you get this wrong when there are so many examples of it being right online. He talks to Aviendha, and I thought I was over my disgust and disappointment at Aviendha being super unattractive. But I just got a glimpse of what this show should have been, and everything that is not it is now standing out in even sharper contrast. The dialogue remains terrible. He definitely understands why they don't use swords now. He just went through 5 visions explaining this shit to him in great detail. Why is he so afraid of standing up for himself? Aviendha then leaves. Sure would be nice for them to get some alone time together to build that relationship, but fuck it, I guess. She's a lesbian now. Rand then refuses to leave until Moraine is done, though, which is the correct choice. I'll give him credit for that. We ripped through some more Moraine visions, and I guess the takeaway here is that Lanfear isn't trustworthy. Duh. I sure am glad you needed Ruidan to make that point clear. Egwene and Lan are chilling back at the tent. Lan cries again. Fuck me, why does this motherfucker always cry? How is this show book accurate enough to rip through these visions with very few missteps, but have Lan cry twice per season? Why is it like this? Rand then carries Moraine back to the tents like a hero should, and that's the end of the episode. And more than anything, I'm just left confused. For the first time after watching an episode, I'm not pissed. There was enough good things here that I can compartmentalize the bad. But the show needs to just stop doing the bad shit. They've proven they can. There doesn't need to be a scene of Rand getting bullied for every Sharam explosion. Lan doesn't need to cry every time we have a Luwin flashback. This still isn't a good episode on its face. I'm just so not used to having anything positive to point to that I'm grading this on a curve. Because on any show other than this, these bad moments would take me right out of it. And maybe that's the note at the end of this episode. It's a watchable episode, easily the best of the series, but it also leaves a bitter taste in your mouth and serves as a reminder of what this could have been had the right people been put in charge of it. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this episode. Walk in the light, boys.